Is the United States abandoning Europe?
Well, I think there's no question that Trump intends to greatly reduce the American commitment to Europe. I think he does not like the Europeans. He's contemptuous when it comes to the Europeans. He does not like NATO. He wants to have good relations with Putin and with Russia more generally. And I think slowly but steadily, we are moving away from Europe. Now, whether we fully pull out remains to be seen. I would note to you, Judge, that if you listen to the Europeans talk, if you listen carefully, I think most of the European leaders understand that that is in the offing. They understand that Trump wants out and that relations between the two sides of the Atlantic are not good and not likely to improve, and indeed, if anything, get worse. So I would be very surprised if NATO is a meaningful institution by the time Trump leaves office.
So, two observations from my interview last week with Sergei Lavrov. One, I asked him if or when the United States leaves NATO, what will become of it? And he rejected my premise. He doesn't think the United States will leave NATO. And two, this was off the record and not being taped. I said, are you guys really going to, this is at the time that Marco Rubio said he had an agreement with Zelensky for a ceasefire. I said, are you really seriously considering a ceasefire? And he said, where would we? We are, and then he stopped, meaning that close, holding his forefinger and thumb about an inch and a half apart to indicate very close to achieving our objective. So to the first statement, rejecting my premise that the United States will leave NATO, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he's probably right that the United States is not going to leave NATO in a formal sense. But as I was saying before, I think that we're going to greatly reduce our commitment to NATO. And we are going to great lengths, we will go to great lengths to turn NATO over to the Europeans. Let them run NATO. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, if the SACEUR, the Supreme Allied Commander in Europe, who has traditionally been an American, is at some point in the not too distant future a European general or admiral. So I think the United States is going to have much less influence in NATO, and I think it'll probably be, as an institution, it'll probably be a hollow shell by the end of Trump's term.
If you defined realism as a universal respect for the sovereignty, the borders, and the legitimate security needs of other countries, hasn't NATO collectively rejected realism? And am I not talking to, at this very moment, the principal progenitor of this theory, John Mearsheimer?
Well, there is no question that the United States does not believe in the sovereignty of other countries.
Right.
There's no country that interferes in the internal affairs of other countries more than the United States does. The color revolutions in Eastern Europe, our attempt to do regime change in both Beijing and Moscow are just some examples of our proclivity for violating the sovereignty of other countries. And I would note to you that we recoil when anybody interferes in our sovereignty. You know, all this talk about the Russians being involved in the 2016 election, it just drove Americans crazy, even though it wasn't true. Russiagate was a false narrative. But nevertheless, we don't like any other country violating our sovereignty. Yet we go around the world violating the sovereignty of other countries. And this does not make good sense